So, it would seem that Wizards of the Coast has succeeded in absolutely killing all of their forward momentum. The latest edition of D&D, which they should have gone ahead and called 6th edition, because calling it D&D 2024 already makes it seem antiquated and out of date in a manner that an edition number does not. It'd be like calling 3rd edition D&D 1999. Just a casual look on Amazon shows that the 5th edition rulebooks are being sold for full price, with top reviews and displayed sales. The new D&D core rulebooks are all at discounted prices. The review average is lower, and they don't bother showing how many copies have been sold over the last month. Perhaps not the most scientific of evidence, but when you also take into account the lack of content on YouTube being made about the new edition, while 5th edition themed videos are still being produced, and, well, there are times when the vibe check is a better gauge than the manipulated quarterly reports of desperate corporations trying to remain solvent. That people out there are still grabbing the 5th edition core books, despite being sold for a higher price, shows you who the real winner is. So for the sake of nostalgia, and on the off chance that you are new to D&D and don't know where to begin, but want to go with the tried and true 5th edition books, here are my top recommendations. The core rule books. You'll want all 3 of these if you plan to be a dungeon master. Technically speaking, these are the only 3 books you will need to be able to run a game, although it will be entirely up to you to design a world setting, NPCs to populate it, and adventures to go on within it. You will also need to come up with a minor amount of lore for the monsters you choose to populate the world with, as each specific D&D setting may have different origins and behaviors for the various critters characters will encounter. If you are setting your game in the default Forgotten Realms setting, Volo's Guide to Monsters is a good supplement to go with the basic monster manual. Of the 3 core books, the DMG is arguably the least important of the trio, especially if you are an experienced dungeon master, but it still contains many essential details and resources, and new DMs will definitely want a copy of it on hand. Now, on to the actual recommendations. I already mentioned Volo's Guide to Monsters, so let's start this list off with the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, a solid, if a bit too brief, overview of the northwestern coastal regions of Faerun. It's a helpful resource for both DMs and players, but I would recommend acquiring a few books from previous editions of D&D to flesh out the Forgotten Realms setting, beyond what is contained in this guide. Dreams of the Red Wizards gives a sufficient overview of Fae, whose Red Wizards are a frequent foil for characters in the Forgotten Realms, and so knowing something about the place isn't the worst idea for dungeon masters. Just keep in mind that you will need to update some aspects of the Fae setting to match the current timeline of Faerun circa 5th edition. The Elves That Ever Meet is also a solid read for those who want to incorporate more elven politics into their campaigns, and 4th edition's Neverwinter campaign setting is helpful to both understand the city's layout, but also for the events that occurred there prior to the 5th edition timeline. For 5th edition adventure modules set in the Forgotten Realms, I would recommend the Dragon of Icespire Peak box set. The longest 5th edition campaign I ran started off using this box set, and I appreciated that it showcased a variety of interrelated side quests over a railroady adventure with a singular storyline that cannot be deviated from. I also like that it is set in the region around Neverwinter instead of Waterdeep or Baldur's Gate, because those cities suck ass. Speaking of the Waterdeep region, I would also recommend the classic Princes of the Apocalypse adventure module, not for its presentation of yet another temple of elemental evil, but for the overlooked wilderness setting it describes, in which lower-level characters can adventure around in and explore, whether or not they're going to become drawn into elemental hijinks. For other D&D settings, I would start by recommending Mythic Odysseys of Theros, as a basic Greek myth-inspired setting, if you can ignore its connections to Magic the Gathering. Ghosts of the Saltmarsh is the only 5th edition product that I am aware of that is set in the Greyhawk world of Orth, and besides some facelifted classic adventure scenarios contained within, it also has a bunch of basic resources useful for any nautical or pirate-themed campaign. I never got around to trying out Tomb of Annihilation or Rime of the Frostmaiden, but I do like how both of these modules feature a random exploration-friendly setup, so they get honorable mentions. Do not buy Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. Artificers are lame as a character class, and the sidekick rules are better in the Dragon of Icespire Peak box set than the version presented in Tasha's Cauldron. Xanathar's Guide to Everything is questionably useful, but does have several low-powered magic items and random name tables that players or DMs could find helpful. There are a few books from towards the end of 5th edition's run that I want to recommend, from the time when the fan base started to split over the materials being published. But as I like to point out, racial modifiers are easy to restore, and you don't have to use every monster they include in every book, or use the lore they present for them. But from this last phase of 5th edition, I have used and do recommend Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, and Monsters of the Multiverse, mostly because it collects most of the other playable races found in various supplements all in one place. I would also recommend the Spelljammer box set. I am biased, as I am a Spelljammer stan, and despite what the box set may be lacking, it can be supplemented with materials from previous editions, just as I recommended for the Forgotten Realms. The Spacefarer's Handbook, the Astromundi Cluster, and the original Spelljammer box set, printed as a single book, will all go a long way to inform and enhance the 5th edition Spelljammer setting. I was a big fan of 2nd edition Planescape back in the day, but the 5th edition Planescape came out right at the time I was no longer in the mood to support Wizards of the Coast financially, so I never looked at it, and can neither recommend it nor condemn it. No opinion. The 2nd edition materials are fairly easy to translate for use in 5th edition anyway, as I have already been doing for years by the time they put out a new box set for Planescape. So there you go. These are the books I would steer you towards if you plan to run a D&D game using 5th edition. Hit like and comment for more delicious content like this. And until next time, stay watchful.
You gotta get I'm giving that kid to why you don't you don't guys don't I don't do I don't Woo!